right, thank you. And thank you for everybody that's on the phone. I see the attendee list keeps growing, so that's great. We talked a little bit about myself, but I want to give you some background on what I've been doing in my career. Today is actually my 2-year anniversary at CAI, and where I am the practice director of the DevOps and cloud practice that we have at CAI. In the past, previous 10 years, I was the director of software engineering, where we focused on development operations, DevOps, which we're going to talk about today, release management, resiliency, and cloud infrastructure. And there, led an enterprise agile transformation. We implemented a continuous delivery pipeline for all of our mortgage applications, as well as led the AWS production implementation for mortgage business at Capital One. Previous to that, and actually before Capital One purchased this company, ING Direct, and that's where I was director of application development, and again was in the mortgage space. And we, at a smaller scale, we did an Agile Scrum transformation, which translated, we ended up using that for our enterprise transformation when we joined Capital One. And then led the architecture refactoring to move into a DevOps implementation. We'll learn a little bit about that. And back in the day, I started with a tool called Power Builder. Few people know it. Nowadays, I'm getting kind of older. So Power Builder development is where I started, and second job is the father of 3, and I should update this slide because it's going to be a 4th one coming. So anyway, that keeps me very busy outside of work. All right. All right, DevOps. So let's start with DevOps. And previously I did a webinar that talked about DevOps and a journey, and it was focused primarily on the application development space. And it's one of the ways at one of my previous organizations is where we started the journey for DevOps. But I'm going to have a few slides of the repeat of that, just to level set, and we can discuss what DevOps is and what it's not, because especially being on this consulting side, I've learned in going into a series of different clients and customers that everybody's interpretation of what DevOps is has a different meaning, and we're going to talk about that a lot. And I call it the 3 areas of an IT organization and where to start your transformation. But I like this slide. It really sums up because there's tons of tools that have come into the market, and I like to start with the number 1. It's not a tool. DevOps is not a tool. It's a collaboration, a mindset, and a methodology. And next is the merging of 2 roles, hence DevOps, application development and IT operations working together to achieve a common goal. The objective is the automation of releasing software, and then I highlighted, because it's particular for this webinar, infrastructure. So it's automation of releasing software and infrastructure faster, more frequent, and with higher quality. All right, for years in software life cycles, and it still exists in many companies too, developers complete code, testers tested code, operations built servers and supported releases, each of them complaining about each other, and in a positive way. I mean, the support guy doesn't want his environment touched because his folks will have to get called out of bed if it's not working and there's severity 1 or 2. And app dev just wants to get software out quicker and quicker. So what it leads to, no one's working together. Software releases could take months. This is a big one that in my career I've lived through, where I walked into a company in ING Direct and we all reported to the CIO, and the head of support. And when I originally sat there, his phone kept ringing all the time while we were in the meetings with the CIO, because we all reported to him that the severities were high. Severity 1 and 2, his phone kept going off. Oh, I got to leave. Sorry, we have a major issue. So he saw me coming into the room, the new guy, and looked at me in a negative way, because I was another person that was coming in that possibly would just push software out the door. And I can say, through the merging of DevOps, 3 years later, we became best friends, and that wasn't because we just got to work together hand in hand, and we moved into this DevOps space, and it really pays off. It's a story I like to share because it's a real life story where we weren't working together, the departments weren't working together when we merged into these team-oriented DevOps, and we'll talk about that more later. It really became one group of people working together to achieve the common goal. All right, and this is a picture of this traditional software factory where you have developments focused on version control, build and test, and there's all the items that go with it, tracking, branching, code, merging, integration, builds, tests, code validation, and the operations team then handled the release management, monitoring, the deployments, the disaster recovery, high availability, and performance. And you'll see at the end of this deck how DevOps and this go together at an organizational picture. So enter DevOps, and I briefly talked about this, but this is where on the left-hand side, originally Dev, and then there was a testing group, and then there's an operation group. Now on the right-hand side, you see all these colorful people. They're all working together from the beginning of requirements, which are stories in Agile, or even they're just early on in the cycle. I don't care if you're doing Agile or not. Well, agility gives you a lot more focus, but this is everybody's involved from the beginning of the puzzle to the end of the puzzle to the support, and these roles become integrated, where it used to be a dev person and then a operations person, a Linux person, then a Unix skill set. These are fungible skills that all merge together. All right, and this is now, you have one picture of the integrated software factory, and they're in this picture showing all doing the same activities continuously over and over again versus a cycle of time. All right, what's the drivers? This is a slide, I'm not going to read everything verbatim, but just what I've just said, the need for greater collaboration between development and operations is the #1 driver for DevOps. It sounds pretty simple. I've started this out with it's not a tool. Now we're going to show you a bunch of tools, but this is the biggest bang for the buck is the teams working together. And just think about it in the old traditional waterfall ways. It's pretty simple to calculate that ROI. If you don't pass things over a wall to somebody else to do something, it really streamlines the activities and the communication, the collaboration, and everybody wants to work together. Traditional IT ops versus DevOps, you can really see this change here, deploying changes. Traditionally, everything takes quite a bit of time more versus the DevOps way. All through from the big one, communication, the changes happen there, and then the firefighting are the other big ones that it's completely different changes. So lots of differences between the two when you work together.